All right. Okay, so hold on.
Okay.
Here we go. 1, 2, 3.
Okay, we're live.
Well, this is a fun game. We got to do this game.
What game are we doing?
Go with music.
Oh.
You got to guess the face.
You're listening to AZRadio.live production of our Multisport Mojo podcast featuring Steve Harper and guest Kurt Taylor. You can hear the Multisport Mojo wherever you get your podcast. Now, here without any further ado, Steve Harper and Kurt Taylor.
Hey, welcome to all you triathletes, swimmers, riders, and runners, newbies, and 10-timers. 8-hour finishers or 16-hour survivors. We're age group gurus, doing the homework, gathering the insights, answering your questions to make you faster, fitter, and fresher in multisport training, and especially on race day. I'm your host, Steve Harper with Multisport Mojo and TryGearGuru.com, and alongside me is my good buddy, Ironman certified coach, Kirk Taylor.
What's up?
Hey, we're both age groupers, Ironman, triathlon, and marathon vets, and everything else multisport in between, here to get you from start to finish. Remember to like us on Facebook at Multisport Mojo, all one word, where you can weigh in and ask questions, and we'll answer them in an upcoming podcast. Follow us on Twitter at #MultisportMojo, and go to TryGearGuru.com. That's TRI, GearGuru.com for more content, insights, and great prices on everything triathlon. Want running? Go to RunGearGuru.com. Biking? Go to RideGearGuru.com. You see where this is going? Swimming? Go to SwimGearGuru.com. Want multi-sport answers? We've got you covered. We'd also like to thank our sponsors, Try Hard Triathlon Coaching, specializing in getting you across the finish line in your first triathlon and beyond. Contact Try Hard, T-R-I, hard on their Facebook page at Try Hard Coaching. AZRadio.live, your home for independent music artists. Discover them here and promote the betterment of your community. Big Mike's Recording Studios, headquartered in Scottsdale, Arizona. Need to record an album, broadcast a radio show, polish up your blogs, Facebook Live feed, or even record a podcast. Contact Big Mike's Recording Studio at AZRadio.live and get all the polish of a professional recording studio at a price that fits your startup budget.
Big Mike's.
How are you, man?
Awesome.
Hey, it's another Thursday. It's another podcast. It's good to be together. Hey, listen, we've got... we broadcast out of Scottsdale, Arizona, and so we've got the Phoenix Mesa Marathon. This is, we're heading into race season, marathon season. This is really the first one in the valley that kicks off. Right behind that is rock and roll, and then the slew of spring races will start. We've done, have you done rock and roll in the past? I haven't done rock and roll.
I did the inaugural rock and roll half marathon.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I know we've done Phoenix a bunch of times.
Let's see. I've done the rock and roll half a couple of times, twice, first and second years.
Yeah.
And then it just got too crowded.
It's a lot of people.
Yeah,
it's a big race.
30,000 people.
Well,
like that.
And Phoenix is growing. Now they call it Phoenix Mesa because you end up running through and landing in Mesa. I get it.
Starting in Mesa, running through Mesa.
Do you ever run through Phoenix?
You end up in Mesa. So to call it the Phoenix Mesa Marathon, we're getting closer.
It's a good race. A lot of people, and that race is growing, and I think they do a really good job.
Yeah.
Hey, we want to talk about how to choose your next race. If you haven't chosen a race, you want to start doing multi-sport, whether it's a 5K, a 10K, half marathon, if you want to get into triathlon or an Olympic or a half Ironman or a full Ironman. Maybe you want to do ultras. Maybe there are relay races that you want to do. Maybe it's a Tour de Tucson that we've got here, big bike race. What if you want to start swimming? In multisport, there's a lot you can do. Depends on your interest. If you want to put them all together, you can do triathlon. But many people look at it, it's after the first of the year, they've set goals, they want to do something. What do you think about first of the year, race season's coming up, and choosing your race? Let's start with running. If I'm a novice runner, what should I look at chewing off? What kind of a race should I look to do?
At the beginning of the year,
Yeah.
For a novice runner,
Yeah, let's say I run 2 or 3 days a week, and I put a couple of miles in. I stay loose, I stay fit,
yeah, I don't
and
know.
I want to put a race on my calendar. What would I do?
I suppose it all depends on what you want to tackle. You
Yeah.
know, you want to do a 5K, 10K. What are you thinking?
What if I say I want to do Phoenix? It's 2 weeks 2 weeks away. Maybe in the fall last year I said, hey, they've got that Phoenix. I think it's half marathon, 10K, full marathon. Is that the setup? Let's say I want to do the half.
Yeah.
Let's say I want to do the half marathon in Phoenix.
Yeah.
And I'm a casual runner, and I got 4 or 5 months ahead of me until race day.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, with 4 or 5 months, you can gear up for a half marathon for sure.
Yeah.
Easily.
What if I got?
Sure.
What if it's October and I got a February race? Early February. Say I got 3 months. Enough time?
For a half marathon?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I kind of think so. So, all right, it's time to unleash the coach now. So, one of the rules of thumb that I've read, you've probably read something similar. A couple things, actually. So, we're going to say 2 rules. He checks his watch just to make sure I don't, go over my time limit here. Number 1, you want to try not to increase your mileage or your long run by more than 10% each week. Okay, from one long run to the next.
Why?
Because you don't want to you don't want to overuse. You got to get your body prepared for that kind of mileage.
Right.
And that you have to just build the endurance. And that just takes time with small and steady increments.
So
And anything you read is gonna tell you that, right?
So if we're 2 weeks outside of Phoenix, I shouldn't decide to do the half marathon now.
Not if you haven't been running, if
Yeah.
if you're, let's say you're at 8 miles as a long run, okay, or 5 or 6 or whatever. Well, okay, a 10% increase on a 5-mile long run, that's only a half a mile. So while that is perhaps conventional wisdom, and I think that perhaps a lot of the periodicals and magazines are going to say something like that because they don't want to expose themselves to liability, that's a really conservative number, the 10%. I know that we've never really paid attention to that. We've done long, so we'll do 6 as kind of our typical
The
average.
base run, daily run.
Yeah, daily run, right? And then the long runs will start at kind of like an 8-miler, okay, on the Saturday, the once a week long run. Well, then maybe after a couple of those, we go to 10. So, there's a 25% increase right off the bat, pretty much. And then from 10, we might go to a 12, something, 13, 14. So we tend not to just, go in 10% increments. So while that may be what you read a lot, the reality of it is a lot of people just don't have time to ramp up that slowly. If you do have the time, fine, great. 10% increase per week or a 1 mile. If you're at 4, all right, well, maybe try.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that there's sometimes an overabundance of caution.
Right. You also don't want to get injured, right? You don't want to go from
Well, yeah.
0 to hero
Right.
and end up on the couch.
Yeah.
Looking at everybody.
Yeah. The other rule of thumb that I do like, and I think this one there is a little bit more to this one. The 10% thing, that's a little too much Chicken Little for me. But the other one that I think is actually pretty worthwhile, just my opinion, which is worth what you pay for it, and we all know how much that is in this case.
Well, but hey, listen, people are watching this because you're,
Well, yeah,
you're a
sure.
coach. So your opinion is going to weigh a little more. So
Okay. No, the long run, my suggestion would be, don't do a long run that is more than the mileage that you have run during the week. Okay? So if you want to
you
do
mean cumulative.
correct, the cumulative mileage that you've run during the week. Your long run should not account for more than 50% of your miles for the week.
That's a good rule of thumb.
Okay? So if you want to do an 18 miler or 20 miler, you should be putting in 18 or 20 miles the other 6 days of the week.
At least.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's a really good rule of thumb. If you're going out, if you're doing, say, 10 miles cumulative during the
Right,
week, and you go
right.
out and you want to do 15, 16, 18 on your long run day, that's not a really good recipe.
Right.
That's yeah.
Well, I would, if you're looking for race plans, certainly I would contact Try Hard Coaching, TRI, Try Hard Coaching, or you can go to rungearguru.com and trygearguru.com. Search for marathon and half marathon plans, and we've got those in there as well. Hey, would that rule of thumb, would that work across the board, ramping up for biking, swimming, running, all three?
Well, the swimming, yeah, I think so. Maybe
Yeah.
the swimming, I think that on the swimming side, there doesn't tend to be a quote long swim necessarily. Although, okay, maybe I shouldn't say that because I think it is good, if not every week, maybe every other week, you do a long, slow, steady swim.
Right.
You're not really doing sets. You're just going to say, okay, I'm swimming 3,000 today.
Right. Especially if you've got a triathlon in your future.
Yeah, say if it's a long distance, a half Ironman or a full Ironman, you want to have you need to have a few of those under your belt.
Yeah, for confidence.
Well, for confidence, for one, and two, just to kind of have some idea what time you're looking at.
Yeah.
I remember, for me, I don't think it was before. I can't remember if it was before the very first Ironman or before a subsequent Ironman. But I remember a swim. One day I said, okay, I'm going to do a 4,000 today. It's going to be nonstop, and my goal is to do it in 1 hour. I'm going to do a 4,000 in 1 hour. Now,
Yeah.
for the real swimmers out there, that's really easy. For me, that was a big challenge. I had to swim every 100 at 1:30 or better, right? I mean, I had to average a 1:30. Every single 100 had to be at a 1:30.
Yeah.
So I sat there with the watch, clicked on every 100 and, found that I was within that. Anyway, it was just a really good swim, and it kind of gave me, I think it was before the very first one. So I really had a good idea. Okay, I think I'm going to do an hour and change for this 2.4 mile swim, right? So yeah, I think it can apply to the swim, although you're not going to be doing a swim that's let's say I've got 2 swims in the week that are 3,000 each. I'm not going to go out and do a 6,000, on the Friday when I did 3 on Monday, 3 on Wednesday. I'm not going to go do 6 on Friday. You just don't see that. At least, that I don't see that. On the biking side, I don't know. You got to kind of come up with a plan. You've got to have a plan. It will involve a long run. If it is a triathlon you're gearing up for, you've got to have a brick workout in there, a bike to run. So you got to have a long bike. You got to have your brick, a couple of other rides. You're looking at 3 or 4 rides a week for sure.
Right.
And I don't know that your long ride necessarily is going to account for 50% of the miles for the week.
Mm-hmm.
It may not. I don't know. What have you done in the past?
For the biking?
Yeah, or swim.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think for both. I mean, I certainly, when I look at race day, when I've got the race on the calendar, I am ramping. It's a constant build until about 2 to 3 weeks ahead of the race, and then I start to dial it back. But I will absolutely have it in a plan. I think one thing, a miss, is knowing that you've got a race and just trying to get, if it's a marathon, trying to get 3 or 4 runs in a week. And boy, it'd be nice if I can get a long one. I think it's critical. Mapped out with everything that you're going to do. A, life comes at you fast and a lot of other things are going on. B, you've got to plan for this.
Yeah.
A marathon, if it's an individual, it's a bike race or a marathon, you've got one workout to slide in during the day. That's easier. But if it's a triathlon, now you have scheduling that's pretty particular around family and work and other interests, and now you've got to slide 2 lengthy, including when you get to your long ones. Your Saturdays are pretty much gone. Your long rides are 4 or 5, 6 hours,
Yeah.
along with a long run, or which can be an hour or two, or you get to the end, you get to that. If it's a full Ironman, you get to that 5th month of 6 months of training, and you're banking a lot of mileage. And so to have everything planned out exactly, just from a workout, what to do, and I mean to the day, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, what am I doing today, and how do you have those coordinated from a triathlon perspective, or just bike, swim, run on each of those, and then to stay with them. It doesn't mean that you can't miss one or two, but certainly you want to be prepared when race day comes. Hey, talk to me about talk to the other factors in choosing a race. Certainly you look up and you say interests or not. What if it's location? Are there easier first time races to do than others?
Well, yeah, absolutely.
Should that be a factor for me? I mean, is a marathon a marathon a marathon, or are
No.
there marathons you want to say, ooh, maybe that should be your 3rd or 4th? What are some kinds of things to look at when you're choosing a race?
You want to look at the course, so we should talk about that. You want to talk about location, time of year, amount of time you have to train for it.
Yeah.
What's involved getting to that race.
Well, let's talk about
Yeah.
the course first.
Okay.
What's for a first timer? What's a good course for a marathon or triathlon?
I say look for something flat.
As flat as you can get.
Yeah, basically, maybe with some downhill.
Yeah.
Little downhill, or maybe a little up and down is okay, but
Yeah.
you don't want to be, you're not looking for 5,000 feet of elevation change, right?
Right.
Yeah, it needs to be just nice and gentle, a gentle course.
Yeah. What about location? I mean, we live here in the valley, in Scottsdale. I did my first race in Colorado about just I guess a little over a year ago.
Yeah.
And yeah, it literally took the wind out of me. I did Boulder.
Yeah, he's got the hat to show
Yeah,
it.
just ironically, how about that? Coincidentally.
So why? There may be somebody listening that has no idea
Well,
why
right,
it was
I mean,
more difficult in Colorado.
all the training that I did was at a low elevation here in Arizona.
Yeah.
And then we went to Colorado and up to Boulder at a much higher elevation that didn't have the course itself. The swim was in a reservoir or a lake reservoir.
Yeah.
The ride had rollers and some pretty good lifts.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm from Boulder or Colorado, not a big deal. We've got a buddy that lives up there and had been training for the better part of a year at that altitude. Was really not a big deal. I got on some of those climbs, gassed at the top, gassed.
What is the altitude of Boulder? Do you have any idea?
I don't. High.
It's
up
5,000 something, right?
there. Yeah, I don't
or
know.
is it at
Well, you're
6?
a Coloradian, right?
Let's see here.
Could be.
Boulder. We'll find out here.
What about now on the converse? I've been here and then gone and done races at sea level, and was fine, right? And had climbs and felt really good, but saw a lot of first timers. And at Oceanside, the Oceanside Ironman, it's a 70.3. There are some climbs. When you look at the elevation chart, I would always look at the elevation chart, and they may look like bumps. I would look at I would look at those climbs. If you have Strava, which is a great tool for running, riding, I would look at the elevations of where you're at and get a barometer for how big those climbs are going to be. I think quite often athletes or fellow age groupers like you and I get on some of these climbs and they take them by surprise, and there's some struggling going on. A, because I hadn't trained for them.
Sure.
So maybe you didn't pick the right race, or B,
Right.
you just didn't expect it. A St. George or an Oceanside, or I think, especially in the Ironman side, they want to make those bike portions, those bike legs challenging. But if you don't know and you're not training for them, you should be careful about how you pick it, yeah?
Yeah, I don't know. That's a good question. I'd be interested to see what everybody out there thinks. Do you think that WTC, World Triathlon Corporation, when they plan out an Ironman race or a half Ironman, do you think that they're looking to make it more challenging of a course or less challenging? What do you think? What do you think sells more tickets? A more challenging
Wow.
course or a less challenging course?
Well, you know, I think that
Hole of the day. And
think-
Boulder, by the way, is a little over a mile high. It's at 5328. 5,328
Okay.
feet is where Boulder is.
And you feel, and I'll tell you where I really felt it was on the swim.
Yeah.
I'd expect to feel it on the swim, right?
Right,
I
yeah.
thought I'd get in the water and go, and by the time I got out, I wasn't gassed, but I had used more energy than I thought I was going to use.
Boy, did I ever experience that. Let's see, second triathlon ever was in Flagstaff, the Mountain Man triathlon. And I thought, oh, this is gonna be so cool. We'll go up to the mountains and, you know, it's gonna be a bike ride through the hills, and there's a run with a good hill at the halfway point. You gotta run up the side of this mountain and then back down. And so I'm definitely going harder than I should be at the beginning of this thing. It wasn't even more than 50 yards into the swim, and I was already, and we'd been up there, you know, for a day or two, so I was a little acclimated, but my poor judgment and my enthusiasm, and all of a sudden, and it kind of tired me out for the rest of the swim, honestly. I was just spending the rest of the swim trying to get myself back under control and get the breathing under control. So, you know, if you're going to a race that's at higher altitude, when it comes to choosing a race, boy, you might, you know, you don't necessarily need to invest in the oxygen tent, the hyperbaric chamber, and sleep in that for a couple of months. Maybe just go a few days early. It's good for that economy too, for the local economy, wherever they're hosting that
Sure,
race,
yeah,
right?
Yeah.
So
I know that
get
I've
acclimated.
I've gone for marathons that were going to be at a higher altitude. I've gone like to Flag. I've gone and done a couple of training runs at a higher altitude just to see what it
Yeah.
would feel like.
Yeah.
One of the worst things that can happen when you're picking a race and you get surprised is to be surprised on race day. Wow, whew, I'm gassed, or
Yeah,
you know,
yeah, that's no fun.
that's no fun. Hey, if I now let's say I pick a race that I know maybe it's either got elevation or it's got climbs, or you know, I don't know, or it's going to be hot. You know, in the time maybe it's a summer race and I know it's going to be warm. Talk about training specifically for that. Should I train specifically for the race that I've got coming up, or should I treat mileage as mileage?
Well, you got to train for the race you're doing.
Yeah.
Oh, of course, yeah. You know, because
What do you think about that?
if it's going to be hot, you want to try to train in the heat if it's possible. You know, whatever that takes. And I guess it also kind of depends on how serious you are about your race and about how you want things to go. Some things are hard to train for. You know, how do you train for a cold race in the rain? Well, you know, a couple years ago, Ironman Arizona, it was freezing cold rain, and the athletes just got dumped on. It was a miserable day. Nobody had really trained for that. You know, you go out and maybe it ends up raining on you on one of your rides or one of your runs, and but to have it rain, just freezing rain all day long, it's really hard to train for that. So even when if you say to yourself, okay, and now here's the thing, Ironman Arizona is already sold out for this next year, like this year's race, 2019. November is already sold out. And there are a lot of other Ironman races on the calendar before November. So it's a very popular race. I knew where I was going to ride. I was going to, you know, ride out the Fountain Hills, go down the Beeline, do this whole big long thing, which was part of the course also.
Smart.
Yeah. And boy, it was a dark and gloomy day when I got on the bike. It started raining. I was about maybe 10 miles into the ride, and it just starts to dump. Home, and it was such a huge confidence booster because I thought, okay, if I can do that, if I can do 70 miles in this horrible rain,
Right.
I can do it.
Right.
I know I'm going to be able to do this. So,
Yeah.
you know, if you've got a long race coming up, an Ironman, for example, your first one, it's a good idea if you haven't ever done it, out there and do a ride in the rain. A little different beast because you got to swim quite a ways, for one, and two, it's a lot about dollars to register for a race. well, for me,
It's not time to mess around anymore.
that's a whole lot of money to put towards registering for something if you're not gonna at least take it somewhat seriously, right?
Hey, couple of questions coming in. What is the most important factor in choosing a race? Is there one factor? What's the most important factor to you?
Wow,
Or are there?
that's a good question. I don't know, what do you say?
Man.
You had time to think about that question. I haven't had time to think about
I
it.
I think for me is the is the course. Time of year kind of doesn't matter to me. If it's I've done summer races, I've done fall and spring. Time of year doesn't. Cost, you're going to work in the cost. Travel might be a big. I haven't really strayed too far. We live in Arizona. I've done Northern California, I've done Colorado, I've done Southern California, Arizona, Utah.
Right.
I've pretty much stayed in the west, southwest. I haven't done a East Coast or someplace like this. So I think it's one of the factors that I say I'm not going to go there. Doesn't mean I couldn't. I think the course itself is something that for me I really, especially on an Ironman triathlon, is my number one factor. I want to know what kind of a course I'm getting myself into.
So I know that studies have been done on this. I know Ironman does a big survey after every race, and they want to know, what were the factors that went into your decision for choosing this race, for example. It'd be interesting to know what the results of those surveys are. What is the biggest reason?
Well, what about for you?
For people choosing a race?
And it maybe just be everybody has a different set of circumstances. So
Yeah, for me, I think it's mostly been proximity. Really, if it's going to be a hard course, I did the St. George Full. The was offered, and that was a hard course.
it might have been the hardest ever.
Yeah, well,
Ironman course.
There's some
People would
argument.
argue.
Yeah, there is definitely a very
You race to the limit from a race director that borders on unfair.
It was pretty legendary, those 3
It made
years.
it unfair. It was an extremely difficult course, and then you had weather conditions that,
Yeah.
man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It makes for good stories, that's for
stories.
sure. Yeah.
Are there races? Do you find races? Here's another question. Do you like to do the same race over and over again?
I have. That's kind of been my MO.
You find one that you like, you dial it onto your race calendar.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I kind of like the consistency. We go up and do the St. George Marathon every year. It's been a while since I've done.
You did. How many Ironman Arizonas did you do in a row?
8.
Yeah. Yeah. And did you go to other places in between? Or
It's
you
like
just
you
stick
find a
that
good
one on
flavor
your
of
phone?
ice cream. I'm just going with that.
Now, what if you wanted to break out? What if you did the same race all the time?
What's funny is
feedback?
I can't remember. This was like it was going to be 5, 6, 7, something like that. I signed up for Coeur d'Alene because I really wanted to do Coeur d'Alene. I
Ironman
wanted to go.
Coeur d'Alene.
Yeah, I thought, man, that is just going to be the most beautiful race ever. I want to go to Coeur d'Alene. I want to swim in that lake. It just looks like an amazing course.
Yeah.
It's a very, it had some history to it. It's one of the
Right.
older races.
Right.
And so I signed up, and a few months after signing up, found out that Pam, my wife, was expecting our second child right around the time of the race. And so I got in touch with Ironman and I said, hey, is there anything I could possibly do? There's just no way we can go up and do this race in June. And they were very kind because that year was I think it was 2008, when they had the last Ironman Arizona in April, and they were switching it to November. I said, anyway, I'd be happy if I could just if you could just give me entry into the November race instead.
Right,
And this was long before they offered insurance and transferability and all this stuff that they do, a little bit of a difference or something. But
Yeah.
so I was all
Worked
set.
out.
I was all set to go to Idaho and do the Coeur d'Alene race, and then Harrison came along, and I was back to Arizona again.
Well, hey, listen, we'll have to save the next question for another podcast on how many races should you do in a year. We'll save that for the for a future podcast. That's all the time we have for today. Kirk and I want to thank you for joining us. Remember to like us on Facebook at Multisport Mojo. That's all one word, where you can weigh in and ask questions, and we'll answer them in an upcoming broadcast. Follow us on Twitter at #MultisportMojo, or go to trygearguru.com for more content and insights and great prices on everything triathlon. Thank you to our sponsors, Try Hard Triathlon Coaching. Contact Try Hard on their Facebook page at Try Hard Coaching. AZRadio.live, your home for independent music artists. Discover them here and promote the betterment of your community. Big Mike's Recording Studio in the house. Contact Big Mike's Recording Studio at AZRadio.live and get all the polish of a professional recording studio at a price that fits your startup budget. This is the Multisport Mojo podcast. Multisport age group gurus doing all the homework, gathering all the insights, answering all your questions to make us all faster and pressure on multisport training and on race day. Here to help you, to get you from start to, I can't even talk anymore.
Finish.
Start to finish. Jimmy, hey, big thanks to Jimmy behind the glass. We'll see you next time.